Now, as I was thinking about this, I'm looking ahead at 2020 and thinking about these exact conversations. How can we make a difference? How can I be more impactful? And one of the biggest things that I learned in 2019 was really getting a fresh slap in the face about the important power. Hey friends, Bart here. It's the end of the year and we're looking ahead at 2020. I just got done winding up a whole bunch of visiting with the family. It was pretty exhausting, as you might imagine. First you got Thanksgiving, and we get into the Christmas adventure, and now we're on into New Year's as well, just boom, 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 one after another. And I gotta tell you, man, I'm definitely feeling it. So I'm looking forward to 2020 because, frankly, I'm kind of exhausted from closing out the year here. Now, I thought, what better way for us to kind of look at 2020 than to think about goals and some of the objectives and some of those milestones that are out there on the horizon. And of course, thinking about the kinds of tools and efforts that are going to be necessary for us to go and accomplish those things. And as I was sitting here thinking about what are my goals, I remembered a poll that I had run earlier in December that really kind of shook me up quite a bit, and I wanted to share a little bit about it. So before I went to reInvent, I was beginning to lament and talking a little bit publicly on the social networks about the role of information technology, the relationship between employees and employers, and then the larger impact that the two of those together can have on the world around us. And I was wondering to myself, how often do people consider the charitable giving, the sustainability, the outreach elements of an organization that they may choose to work with when they're considering making them an employer? Because as I think back over my history as an employee and as somebody who sought jobs and worked with individual organizations, very infrequently did I ever consider that up until fairly recently. And it got me wondering, are others having the same experience as well? And what makes the difference when you have an opportunity to choose an employer? Frankly, most of the time when I was looking for a job, I was kind of like, what's available in my area? What sort of salary could I potentially command? And whether or not I could logistically actually get that job. When I first started working out in Oregon for Lithium Motors, my first IT job, none of these things were in my mind. I was looking for a job that would hire somebody with very little experience, with the basic certifications, who was looking to get in and build a career. And so fortunately, they were able to take me on. I was able to get into a help desk position, but the idea of their charitability, their outreach, or their sustainability practices, absolutely not on my radar. And, I'm a little shameful to think about it now, being a parent, being a father, and considering some of the impacts that we're seeing in the world around us. So yeah, I'm wondering if there's something that I can do maybe to help encourage others to consider this, or maybe just to try to understand the nature of the problem that I'm kind of describing here. So what I did was I ran a poll. And I asked people this exact question. I said, given the opportunity to, how much does the charitable sustainability and outreach efforts of an organization weigh on your considerations to take them on as an employer? And of course, what I was hoping to find out here was where the people that follow me on the internet there, where their interests would lie on here. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised to find out that after looking at the poll, most of the respondents said that they're looking at the income and earning potential of the organization rather than really considering maybe even the work environment, the learning opportunities, or of course, this piece I was talking about, like the charitability, sustainability, and outreach elements of it. Now, for me, when I got to join with CBT Nuggets, honestly, it was one of the first times that I ever really found myself in my career having an opportunity to potentially consider the impact of this. So that was kind of the reasoning behind the poll. I really wanted to understand what others felt about this. And so I think a couple of things that I kind of gleaned from this is that the first thing to recognize is that the idea of picking an employer is a type of privilege. Okay. And for me, that privilege didn't come along until I got to a certain point in my career where I felt like I had a skill set that was in demand enough for me to maybe dictate some of the hiring conditions. And so I'm curious, as you guys are watching the video out there, have you ever found yourself in a situation in which you pushed against a potential employer to find out about these elements, or maybe turned away from a potential employer because you felt like they weren't an organization that was worth working for? So I'm really curious. I'm really looking out there to try to find some rejuvenation in the industry here and see whether or not others are struggling with the same concern as well. Because I get it. If you're in a situation where you're going from substandard living, you're going from a situation where you're not making the income that you want to or need to to make ends meet, then the idea of picking something based on their charitability or their outreach, of course, that's going to go right out the window because of the basic logistics of the situation. So again, if you've had your situation like this, if you found yourself in these scenarios, I really want to hear about it. Let us know, share it in the comments there. We'd love to hear what your thoughts were on the subject. The other part that I recognized here is, what could we possibly do to change or affect this? Just a minute ago, I was pointing out that this is something that I felt privileged to do much later on in my career. So I'm wondering, how do we push that opportunity even closer? And maybe even just by having this conversation, we can look to employers to help augment the way that these hiring packages work. Because I know for a lot of us, you might choose to work for an organization based on those dollar signs and that salary part of it. But what is the burden on your soul and on your personal belief, your existential parts of these pieces here? How does that job go from being something that just puts bread on the table to something that really is satisfying? And I think that's really the big thing that I ultimately came away from this from, is that in a lot of situations, people are looking to basically make ends meet and not necessarily thinking about the work-life balance or the satisfaction part of it. And of course, for me, this is a huge tragedy. It pains me to think that so many out there have to make a decision like this. So again, if you feel this way, or if you've experienced some of this, please reach out to me. I really want to hear about how this has affected you and whether or not you found yourself at a point in your career where you were able to leverage that privilege enough to go and work for an employer that really did the types of things that you wanted to support. Now, a couple other things that I thought kind of played into this as well has to do with regionality. And I talked to a lot of learners about this. When going to approach the hiring scenario, people generally have two major buckets to choose from. Local gigs with businesses where I can, reasonably drive to and from those organizations. Has a nice benefit to it. They're local. You're able to interact with them directly. You may have in-office hours available there, or you may only have the option of working there locally. So those sorts of jobs are certainly available, and depending on the market or the region that you're in, you may have more or less opportunities there. The other side of the puzzle are the remote workers and the remote enablement sort of positions. And this would be where an employer like, for example, CBT Nuggets, they hired me. They're based out of Eugene, Oregon. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. There was never any expectation of me living in or being in the office with them on a day-to-day basis. So I really hope that in the years to come ahead, the remote working part of this is going to maybe alleviate some of this, because now you're not just competing for local gigs with worthwhile employers. You're now able to look at maybe national opportunities or maybe even international opportunities, again, working with organizations that might tip the scale towards being lucrative, but then also being wholly beneficial for you, your work-life balance, and then maybe for other things like charitability, outreach, and sustainability, because these are really big things. And I think particularly for me as a father, I get overwhelmed by it. I feel troubled by some of the things that I see, and I want to make a difference. The problem is that I often also feel burdened by the notion that I'm just a single individual. And so the idea that I can individually make a difference may not be as powerful as the effort that collective groups can. And of course, this is why we have unions. This is why we have coalitions. This is why we organize and group up and work together as teams. And so I'm really intrigued to see whether or not we can begin to shift some of this thinking, because the market is evolving, the types of jobs are evolving, and hey, maybe also, wouldn't it be nice if our employers were beginning to evolve as well and recognizing that this sort of incentivization is something that we don't have to leave off the table. So I'm really curious, how often have you ever considered the charitability, outreach, and sustainability of an organization when you go to work for them? Cool. So let me know what you think there. Now, as I was thinking about this, I'm looking ahead at 2020 and thinking about these exact conversations. How can we make a difference? How can I be more impactful? And one of the biggest things that I learned in 2019 was really getting a fresh slap in the face about the important power of positivity. And I used to think for a long time that being positive meant speaking about sunshine and roses all the time and looking for the sunny side of the street. And sure, there is absolutely a big part of that. But it also has to do with the way that you engage others, the types of things that you say, the reactions that you have. And so after spending a lot of time in 2019 really forcing myself to sit with this and grow my positivity inside of it, I'm feeling, frankly, super excited, because I feel really empowered by it, and I've seen some immediate changes in my own personal life that have come from these positivity changes, and also seen changes in the others around me because of the positivity changes I've made in myself. So in 2020, I'm taking positivity to the absolute max, and I'm going to try to go even farther with it. I figured if I've grown it this much in 2019, in 2020, I should be able to grow that even farther, and maybe that orb, that glowing light, that energy that I bring out there is going to help encapsulate others and help inspire them and motivate them down the road as well. I really hope so, especially as a father, as a husband, as a son with parents and with relatives as well. I want to have that role. I want to be that sort of light in the world around me. So really hoping to see what I can do with that sort of positivity in the year to come. Along those lines as well, I intend to try to volunteer even more. Now, let's be frank about it. 2020 is an election year in the United States, and there are lots of opportunities to get involved. And so I encourage you to consider the role that you might play. If you don't feel good about supporting a specific candidate, consider just helping with the voter registration process. It's something that's worthwhile to the entire democratic process, and it will benefit us all in the long run if we can get people engaged and definitely help with the disenfranchisement, something that I'm going to talk about more in separate videos coming up down the road. Now, 2 more goals for 2020. I want to try to get Azure certified. I've been working a bunch on it this year, kind of in between doing my AWS studies. I don't have any specific objective here. I just want to take this on as a challenge. Azure is a very important cloud provider in the cloud space, and I've worked with it quite a bit already. I have a lot of cloud experience, and I also think that it's beneficial for my learners to help being able to kind of evaluate and compare and contrast, because we definitely get a lot of questions about which one's better, what's the difference between them, where are the job opportunities there, especially with Microsoft and Azure winning that JEDI contract. It's going to be interesting to see how these cloud vendors continue to evolve in the years ahead. And part of my commitment there is to continue spreading out my hybrid cloud understanding even farther than I already have. So we'll keep you up to date on how that goes. The final thing, I have been working a lot on learning my own JavaScript skills here. I spent the last couple of weeks here kind of beating my head against the wall trying to make the difference between client and server-side JavaScript kind of make sense in my head. Recently kind of had a breakthrough with that, so I'm feeling really good. And I am making a Jurassic Park simulator map game. So I'm really anxious to try to get that completed in 2020. Just kind of a fun little goal to set for myself. Beyond that, I'm gonna make art, I'm gonna make music, I'm gonna make training videos, and I'm gonna do everything I can to kind of connect with everybody out there in the cloud space. So looking ahead at 2020, let me know what you thought about that poll feedback. Let me know what your goals are. And I hope everybody has a fantastic, rockin' awesome year. And remember, we'll see you in the cloud.